This week's Parsha, the story of Mechiras Yosef, comes to a dramatic climax. When Yosef finally breaks down, V'yiten es koiloi bevechi, and he tells his brothers, Ani Yosef. Many times I say, Chumash Bereshis, one cannot and should not learn lefi pshutoi. Chumash Bereshis, one needs to learn with the Zohar or the Ramban ala Torah. When we learn Chumash Bereshis lefi pshutoi, we might have many questions. And when you learn the story of Yosef, it seems to be that Yosef enjoys tormenting his brothers as if in a coma. You the guys that sold me, I'm going to teach you a lesson. And he torments them again and again. He doesn't tell them who he is. He accuses them of being spies. He locks up Shimon, sends them home. They came back once again, and he says, you said you have a little brother, bring him. Yosef knows what Binyamin means to Yaakov. He knows that all he had from Rachel is Yosef and Binyamin, and Yosef is lost. They bring Binyamin, and everyone is happy, and he gives them supplies, sends them home, and then they plant the Gavia Kesef Bamtachas Binyamin, he brings them back. What's the story about? Libi Yoimeli. In Parshas Miketz, when the brothers start to make a cheshbon and nefesh, and they say to each other, Avol Hashemem anachnu, alachinu, ki ro'inu b'tzoras nafshoi b'schanenoi eleinu, velo shamanu. The brothers say, he's our brother, and he was crying. Our brother was crying, and we just ignored him. Velo shamanu. We are to blame. So the brothers were to blame for two different things. How could you do this to your father? To lie to him, say Yosef, and you see your father in mourning, broken-hearted, and you didn't care. And how could you do this to a brother? How could you do this to a father, and how could you do this to a brother? Yosef knows the Zohar and the Medrash. He knows the terrible price that Klal Yisrael pays for Mechiras Yosef. You probably all know from the Kinnos and Tisha B'Av and from the Kinnos we say in Yom Kippur, Aseres Haruga Malchus were because of Mechiras Yosef. And Yosef knows it is my duty and my chiyuv and my obligation to bring my brothers to tshuva shalema. Because if they don't do tshuva, the price we will need to pay will be unbearable, will be impossible. Yosef knows this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu expects me to do. And against his nature, with a broken heart, he knows, I cannot relent. I must see this through. When does he break down crying? When Yehuda says, if I come home without Binyamin, my father can't take it, and I won't do this to my father. But you did it in the past to your father, when you lied to him, and you said Yosef was killed by an animal. Yes, I did it once, but I won't do it again. I can't do this to my father, Yehuda says. And then he says, Ki avdachu orev esanar, yeshevnu avdachu tachas anar, vanar yael eloviv. From Yehuda's point of view, Binyamin is the one that stole that cup. After all, it was found Bamtachas Binyamin. Everybody knows that Binyamin is the one that committed this terrible crime. But nevertheless, Yehuda says, I am willing to spend the rest of my life as a slave in a distant land, and my little brother will go home to his father. So Yosef at that moment realizes, I have achieved my goal. I brought brotherhood back to my brothers. I brought Kibud Av back to my brothers. When Yehuda says, I'm not going back without Binyamin, I'm not going to do this to my father, and I am willing to spend the rest of my life as a slave in bondage, and my brother will go home. And that moment Yosef could take it no longer. The Ramban teaches us in the beginning of Shemos, when we learn the story of the Ovis Agdoshim and the Shavotim, these are not only stories and episodes about individuals, about people. Whatever the giants did, whatever the Ovis did, was about the future of Klal Yisrael ad sof kol hadoros. And the story of Yosef and his brothers, B'derech min hadrochim, affected the entire history of Klal Yisrael. And what Yosef wanted to achieve is the tshuva of his brothers and to prevent tragedy from Klal Yisrael throughout their generations. That is the way we need to learn this parsha. Parshas Vayigash is the last parsha in Chumash Bereshis, and the Parshas Vayigash, Yankov benches all his children, and the brachas of Yankov are with us throughout the generations. Chazal say, Kol ha'holech b'darko oves ani miskoimim ola b'schus avois. When we go b'darko oves, HaKadosh Baruch Hu remembers chus avois and chazdai avois and bris avois, ubeglal avois toshia bonim v'sovi geula levnei v'neim. We should be zoicha b'schus avoseinu agdoshim to see pnei Moshiach tzedkeinu v'korov b'yomeinu amen. Good Shabbos.